everybody. Welcome back to But Why the Podcast. And today we are talking about The Predator. As always, I'm Kate. I'm here with Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
And Matt.
Hello.
And yeah, I'm not leading this episode today. Adrian is, which I think is kind of a surprise because people always ask me about The Predator, but I don't have that much knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that like later on you can kind of like talk a little bit about it because I think that like I don't know if people classify this as like a horror slasher monster movie. I have a whole piece for that, but I don't know. But I imagine that's probably why they ask you. Oh, Matt, you can't say no. You're not the horror person.
I'm gonna say no right now.
Oh, okay, first of all, Matt, we're definitely, it's somewhere way back when, but I think we established that everything can be classified as horror if you look at it in a certain way. Because I think what we told Kate, I think that one time.
Yes, this is a valid thing.
I think we said that somewhere.
I will save what I have to save for later.
So like there's no like really rhyme or reason why we're doing a Predator episode. I was like,
well, I mean, the game did come out.
The game did come out. I didn't even realize that was a game because one, it's like a PlayStation 4 / like PC thing. I don't know who would play that game on PC. But two, I just went into like a YouTube rabbit hole where I clicked on one video the other day and then like another video and another video. And now I've watched all the Predator movies again. So here we are. So for our intro question, we'll just keep it real basic because this isn't like a huge franchise. We've covered like lots of huge franchises over the last couple of weeks. So this one should be a little bit more tame. But which of the Predator movies is your favorite, including Alien vs. Predator and the other one that came out, is your favorite movie? We'll start with Kate.
The Robert Rodriguez one. I think it's Predators or something like that. I really love that movie. It's really, really well done. And it was shot in Austin, which is also kind of cool. I'm also a Robert Rodriguez fangirl, so that probably has everything to do with that being my choice. Because it's Predator, but at the same time, it's filled with a lot more of the not absurd, but like a lot of the like more heavy-handed, gory action than some of the other movies, and that's just because that's Robert Rodriguez's thing. But I also like the lore that they establish it, and I actually really like the characters. Plus, I'm a sucker for put convicts in an area or put people in an area and have them run from something. And so that one leaned completely into the trope.
So you must have really liked this Stone Cold Steve Austin convict movie that came out.
The Condemned, I've seen it like 3 times.
I really do like that movie, unironically. I actually just finished watching Predators as we're about to start recording, and I can agree. I think it's still really good. What about you?
Is it really good or just like decent?
No, it's really good.
It's pretty good. It takes all the best parts of like we'll talk about it, but it takes all the best parts of like the Predator movies and puts it in one movie without like
all right,
what we
so
get in
once again,
The Predator. Matt, if you say your favorite movie is The Predator,
all
right, so once again,
right now.
So once again, Matt has to be with the reason of all of these people here. I'm going with Predator because Predator is Matt years old. The very first one. Also, I mean, that one's pretty good. I do enjoy it. Obviously, Predator 2 is not amazing, but it's very interesting only because we add this weird, like, I believe city element that gets weird.
Yeah.
But those two are probably the big ones. Obviously, they're probably the most famous ones or whatever. Don't care for basically everything after that. I just don't really care for that much. The Predator 2010 is not that bad of a movie. That's probably the only decent one they make in the next, 30 years.
That's what we're saying, but also it's a good movie. It has Adrian Brody.
It's not a high bar, though.
It has Adrian Brody in it. That alone. Adrian Brody, Topher Grace, Alice Braga, Danny Trejo is in it. So, I mean, because of course it's Robert Rodriguez. But, it's a good movie. You even get a young Mahershala Ali. So,
Yep.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, but Predator 2 had Danny Glover, Gary Busey, and Bill Paxton in it.
So, exactly. I was like, we had Danny Glover in this movie, Bill Paxton in this movie. Come on now.
Such a weird cast of characters in that Predator 2 movie. But we'll kind of get into it. As we always do, we'll kind of do a brief history in this being a movie franchise. Obviously, we'll have some production history. Despite all of the comics and the books and crossovers and stuff, the production history is very short. So if you're not familiar with Predator is a science fiction action media franchise centered on the film series depicting mankind's encounter with a race of extraterrestrial trophy hunters known as the Predator. Following the release of Rocky IV, that's the one where he fights the Russian, a joke circulated in Hollywood that Rocky Balboa had run out of earthly opponents and that he'd have to fight an alien in the fifth film if it were to be made. Screenwriters Jim and John Thomas took the inspiration from that joke and wrote a screenplay, and that's basically kind of how we get this movie here. You basically have a big dudes fight alien is like basically the premise of the first Predator movie, and it kind of obviously takes things from other movies like what it's like to be hunted and kind of things like that, but at the very heart of it, it's like a bunch of commando guys are in the jungle and they have to avoid being killed by this super predator hunter alien. The script was picked up by 20th Century Fox in 1985 and was turned over to producer Joel Silver, who, based on his experience with Commando, decided to turn it into a science fiction pulp storyline and basically turn it into a big summer blockbuster, because this does come out in June of 1987 and would basically be directed by John Tinnerman, who we have talked about before because he's also the director of Die Hard, also the director of The Last Action Hero and 13th Warrior. But this would basically be, before he does Die Hard, he does this movie, and this is basically his first big studio film. And the studio would also hire on screenwriter Shane Black, not only to play a supporting role in the movie because he is in the movie, but also to kind of keep an eye on John due to his lack of directorial experience. And if you know Shane Black, obviously, like Lethal Weapon, Last Action Hero, as a writer, director of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, The Predator.
So when are we getting
lots
the
of really
Lethal
great
Weapon
movies,
thing?
and then
a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, but when are we getting Lethal Weapon? Because Lethal Weapon's actually great. And it's one of those weird franchises that people seem to forget about. Obviously, probably because as we get farther past the Jet Li one, they get kind of, what the hell are we doing?
I would definitely like to do a Lethal Weapon movie, but we also have to talk about Lethal Weapon 5 with the crew of Always Sunny, because I think their Lethal Weapon is one of the best Lethal Weapon movies there is.
That's fair.
So again, like they get the screenplay together, 20th Century Fox greenlights it, and basically like the movie is super central. Essentially, it's a 80s action movie, especially like an 80s movie in the late 80s. So you have big dudes, big action, big explosions, a bunch of one-liners, some of my favorite one-liners actually when it comes to like 80s action movies. But the big difference here between like Predator and something like Die Hard or Top Gun or like those kind of movies is that you basically have a monster movie with like a one-on-one showdown between like a man and a monster at the end. But a lot of the other tropes are still there with just overly misogynistic stuff and like muscles. And I thought that this movie could be made today, like shown today, but they say some stuff in that movie, especially yeah, they say some stuff in that movie that definitely wouldn't fly. They have to change some of their wording around. But basically, Predator comes out in 1987 and finishes top 10 in its grossing, which I think is pretty decent considering it comes from a very simple premise. And then two, the movies that come out in basically December 1986 and 1987 are pretty good. So you have Beverly Hills Cops 2, Fatal Attraction, Platoon, Lethal Weapon, which all make more than Predator. But you also have movies like Dirty Dancing, La Bamba, RoboCop, Full Metal Jacket, the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie, Dream Warriors, and Spaceballs all come out that same year. And
see, I was born in a great year. Thank you very much.
all come out the same year, but Predator makes more than those mentioned in the second half of that.
I will say I do like the premise they do of the trophy hunter. That was probably the most intriguing thing that I've always liked about the Predator stuff. It's just like we show up here to take on, which they kind of done in comics. I'm assuming there's a comic run that they do that with too, where we go fight thing. But I thought it was always just interesting the way they basically like, which I guess we see later in the later films of the whole stuff. But like, they're not like, they're the weird monster of like, it's not like we're coming here just to kill and destroy you. We're here just to collect a trophy.
Yeah.
And that's it. Which we see in all the films, especially when it comes to like, which we'll probably get into the way the Predator acts in a lot of these movies.
Yeah, for sure. But the simple part of it is, and we'll try to jump into about why those here, is that you basically like have this summer blockbuster that explodes into a decently sized franchise outside of just movies, like Matt was mentioning. So basically, from the first Predator movie, we have different movies. So Predator, obviously 1987. Basically, you have Predator in the Jungle. Predator 2 in 1990. This is the one with Danny Glover, Gary Busey, and Bill Paxton. This one is directed by Stephen Hopkins, who also is the director of Dangerous Game, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and Lost in Space. And this one is Predator in the Concrete Jungle. Alien versus Predator. Do you like that? I thought that was pretty good. I was really happy.
I read it earlier. It didn't even hit me because I was talking about, oh yeah, they go to the city, and then he goes concrete jungle, and I was like, oh yeah, that's literally all it is.
I'm very happy with that one, personally. Alien versus Predator in 2004, which is directed by Paul Anderson, who also does Mortal Kombat 1, Soldier, Resident Evil, Dead or Alive, and Event Horizon. And this is Predators, but with aliens. And we go from AVP with his Predator with aliens to Alien vs. Predator, Requiem in 2007, which is directed by Greg and Colin Strauss, who have literally no movies I'd ever heard of, so I didn't put anything. And this one is Predator, but with a Predalien and dark camera shots. This is one of the worst shot movies I've ever seen in my entire life, and I hate it.
This movie is awful.
I like trash. That is too trashy for me. You don't.
This movie's just a black screen.
You can't see
Dude,
what's
all this
going
movie is.
on.
I think I have a very specific brand. I'm okay with like dumb action movies if like there's like cool stuff going on. But if I can't see the cool stuff going on, your movie's bad, and I don't like it.
Also,
That is just
Predalien
a
could have been cool, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah, it's cool when you look at all of like the lightened up shots. Like, it's cool. It's got dreads.
Just turn that contrast all the way up. Turn the brightness all the way up.
Dude, it's like they got at the beginning of the video game. They're like, "Oh, turn your brightness up so you can, or turn your brightness down so you can barely see the logo." And they just went the whole other direction. They were like,
I'm
"Nah,
gonna make this hard."
yeah, we don't want to see anything in this movie.
For the record, that movie has a 12 on Rotten Tomatoes.
It deserves less.
It deserves less.
Yeah.
That movie deserves like a 2.
I'm telling you, it's just a black screen. That's all that movie is.
God,
with
it's
sound
so
effects.
bad. Like, here's a subplot about family. Here's a subplot with some teenagers breaking into a thing because they're like,
I
come
love
on.
AVP. I will never watch Requiem. I saw it on FX. I saw about half of it, and then I got frustrated, so I left the channel, watched an episode of something else, came back, and it was still on, so I finished it, and it was no.
You don't even get to see them fighting in like the climax of the movie.
So I'm pretty sure, which obviously you're going to get into, but these two movies end up setting up, sadly, I think why people are down on this next movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have Predators in 2010, which is directed by Nimrod Untitled, but produced by Robert Rodriguez, which is what Kate was talking about. Robert Rod earlier. And this one is basically just Predator 1, but on an alien planet and bigger predators is like the essential thing of this movie.
It's so fun, though.
But it's really
so
good.
many predators.
It's good. And I'm a sucker for like callbacks to like original material and stuff. And this one's full of it. This one's full of it.
Also, just to point out, Lawrence Fishburne was the Bowery King here first, before he was
Yeah,
the Bowery
for
King
sure.
in John
For
Wick.
sure. Yeah, he was talking to his,
so, like-
his pet parrots for sure in that movie. Or pigeons.
So, like
in
I
that
said,
movie.
this movie gets probably overlooked a lot, even though I don't think it's as good as what y'all are saying but I don't think it's a bad movie. But I do think this movie gets overlooked a lot just because the one that comes before it, and then obviously we'll get to the next one, which is probably just as bad,
It's worse.
if not worse.
I tried.
Yeah,
Because I do know by the
Really
time Predators
hard.
come, people are kind of tired of Predator because of the previous movies.
Yeah, Predators is good. I think that it doesn't get enough love, but I think if you went and watch it again, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is pretty good.
I
This is
own it.
like-
I own the DVD.
But then 8 years later, you get The Predator, where Shane Black comes in and is like, oh, I'm not gonna write or be in my movie. I'm just going to direct the movie. And this one is like super ultimate Predator, but with action. And there's like some fugitive subplot where like, where are the Predators like a fugitive, but he's like killing humans, but he's trying to like give technology to us to kill other predators.
It's so bad.
And then the
So
doctor
bad.
I tried
in
to
it
watch this
all of
one.
a sudden is able to run step for step with like an elite predator, even though she's like just a doctor. I don't get that
It's
movie
bad.
really at all.
The thing
I tried to watch it. It was terrible.
The thing that was hilarious was at Fantastic Fest. I mean, I just wore graphic tees the entire time, and I have a T-shirt from the Predator video game that I got at PAX West, and so I was wearing that. And I did the red carpet for In the Shadow of the Moon, which has Boyd Holbrook, who is actually a phenomenal actress. He plays Quinn in The Predator. And he gave me a hug because I was wearing a Predator t-shirt, and I was like, oh, honey, I hate that movie. But it's fine. You're giving me a hug. And I felt so awkward because I was just like, I'm sorry. Yeah, nod. I liked it. That's totally what this shirt is. Yeah, sure. But
yeah, that movie's just all over the place, and I don't know what Shane Black was thinking. Like, you were on the first Predator, my guy. Like, you know what the people want. Like, that is not what the people want in their Predator movie.
And the cast, it's a letdown because the cast is actually really good. Keegan-Michael Key, Olivia Munn, Sterling K. Brown, Thomas Jane, like, freaking Theon Greyjoy's in there, too. Like, they have a lot of people in there that should make the movie good.
Yeah, and, like, their scenes together, like, when they're, like, you know, going back and forth is good. But the plot of the movie is just dumb. Like, it's just a dumb plot, and nothing's really explained. Yeah, it's just not good, and I don't like it, and it is erased from my memory. And we're gonna move on because, yeah, there are.
Adrian, you tell me you can't pick up a shotgun and start shooting things like without looking and nailing it?
Look, man, you can pick up a shotgun and get lucky. You cannot. I don't care who you are. You are not running step for step with a Predator if all you've done your whole life is spend your whole life in a lab and like you're like in heels. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Like, it's just not. I'm sorry.
Labs give you special powers.
Labs give you special power, and apparently gives you the powers to run with a thing that's 7 feet tall and is like literally built to kill things. Oh god, that movie's so bad. So bad.
It's real bad.
And the thing is all like Shane Black, like you were like a part of one of the coolest like monster designs ever, and you're like, hey, let's just make the Predator, Super Predator, all CGI. Let's not even like put a dude in a suit like we did back in 1987. Let's just make it a CGI thing. Oh god, so dumb. Shame on you, Shane Black. Shame on you. Anyway, from there, basically almost right after we have the first two Predator movies, we do get lots of things that kind of expand the universe. So first you have the novels, primarily done by Dark Horse, and these are novels from 1995 to 2008, and they're primarily just about humans with run-ins with predators here on Earth. So different situations about them kind of coming back and things like that, kind of all around the planet. Where you get a lot of the story with the predators fleshed out is in the comics, and these are again also done mostly by Dark Horse. And these basically come out immediately after the first one comes out, and we get to know more about the Predators as a people. You also have lots of crossovers, things like Judge Dredd, Batman, Superman. He actually fights Batman quite a bit. Like, they fight. I don't know why they fight Batman so much. Like, why do they want to fight Batman so much?
Trophy hunting. Batman's the best. Therefore, Predators got to take on the best. They fight
Superman. Like, I like Predators, but like, I didn't read the comics where they fought Superman, but I'm not liking their chances there against Superman. I'm really not. But they also have a crossover with Tarzan, Witchblade, and definitely the most famous one of all of those is going to be their things with Alien in the franchise, and would basically be the principal start for what we have for the Alien vs. Predator movies in the early 2000s. There are various different video games that basically start essentially in 1987, and most of the video games that are out are basically based on the movies. And Sony recently published Predator Hunting Ground in April of this year. That's essentially like one of those, I don't know what the genre for the game was, but like one of those games like where you have one guy's the monster, four guys people.
It's an asymmetrical shooter.
It's Evolve, like we talked about last week. It's basically just Evolve.
It's right. I will say I do remember because I wanted to look up because I was like, I'm pretty sure I played the 1992 video game Predator 2. That one, I do remember that one. I don't remember some of these other ones because obviously there's some, but I don't remember that one. There was the one in 2005, which the screen looks familiar, but I forgot existed. Predator Concrete Jungle, but I forgot that existed. Nope, that's
is that the actual name of the game? Is it actually Concrete Jungle?
Yes, it's Predator Concrete Jungle, developed by Eurocon for Xbox, for PlayStation 2 and Xbox consoles. I remember this game. Now that I'm looking at it, I do remember it coming out. I never touched it, and obviously I know why, because this game was rated awful.
So I have never played any of the Predator games other than Predator Hunting Grounds, which we played a couple of times at PAX West. I do want to specify that it is more than just one person than the Predator versus humans. The really cool thing with it that I wish I didn't have that I wish I had a PlayStation 4. I would have played it because this is my jam. Is that it's 1 versus 4 versus environment.
AI.
So you essentially, because it's the army infiltrating something, you're literally working as a military person going into a base, and so you have to avoid NPCs at the same time as the predator stalking you from the top. So it gives it a really cool mechanic, and it's really fun. The class system was kind of weird, but we also didn't. I mean, everybody on our team chose like the same class, so we didn't get to see a lot.
Except me.
Except
I
you.
chose a different class.
You did. Because you're special. but no, it was actually a really interesting game. I mean, but I also really love asymmetrical games a lot. Matt and I have talked about it. He's like, I'll play one match and I'm done. And I'm like, no, I want to play all day.
So I do know this game came out. Obviously, it came out. It wasn't well received review. I think some people felt like it sounded like it rushed or something because there was just a lot of issues and just other stuff.
Yeah, when I was
I thought it was the beta that came out.
The very brief stuff that I looked at, it was like, oh, it got delayed. It was supposed to release earlier, but got released in April. And then obviously, like, April is like coronavirus time, so like I don't really know anyone who like has this game personally, but IGN gave it a 5 out of 10. It's on PS4, but also on Windows, so PC. But
Who's playing that?
I don't know who's playing, but it is a game that exists. But you can also play as Predator in Mortal Kombat 10. So I mean, there's that.
Yeah, like I said, I do remember playing. Obviously, like I said, I played PAX West. It seemed like an interesting concept. That had some cool elements, and they said, and some other dynamics, as Kata mentioned. It just seemed, I can't say for a fact, it seemed like they rushed the game out. I don't know why. I can't say I played the final product, but just from everything I saw and the way. Yeah, we played an alpha, and that was PAX West, and then, like, I honestly didn't realize the game actually because Kate and I talked about this before this episode, like, and Kate was like, the game fully released, and I was like, I thought that was just literally the beta that came out, but apparently the beta came out, I believe it was in March?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And then apparently they decided to go with April.
So I thought the alpha was done pretty well for being an alpha, but then when it launched, it had a lot of the same issues. Honestly, I'm wondering if it's something of the genre that when it comes to bugs and patches and just not knowing how to troubleshoot it as well, because it had a lot of the same issues as last year and Friday the 13th. So it would be interesting to know. But also,
and Resident Evil, didn't it?
Yeah, same with Resident Evil 2. Lobbies are a giant problem, and then just in-game patches, and of course when you're doing 1 versus 4 versus everybody is also other dynamics that make it fairly hard. But yeah, I haven't played it since, so I can't really say. I've just kept up with it and kind of watched a lot of people respond to it, I guess, which hasn't been positive. So
yeah. But that's basically what we got. And there's a pinball machine because there's always a pinball machine. Oh, and
is there a musical?
There is no musical, unfortunately, but I think there deserves to be one. Like, give me a movie where someone plays as like Arnold Schwarzenegger and like is singing and like I don't know. I'd like to see it. Give it to me, please.
Oh, I think I do know why I thought of thing because I think they were.
What'd you say?
Oh, sorry. I said I think I know why I think because I saw I think they're adding Arnold Schwarzenegger to the game. I believe it's coming in an update.
Oh yes. That is what it was because you told me that, and I was like, ooh.
That's why I thought it wasn't out yet.
Yeah, there's no official musical. I saw a bunch of like parody musical things online, like animation wise, but no official musical. But I do like the music though in the first Predator movie, and they kind of like mix it up a little bit in Predators, which is kind of cool. But from there, just kind of talking primarily about the first movie and kind of what they do with special effects and kind of why it's important. We'll start with the Predator itself. So at least to me, like at its heart, like Predator and the franchise as a whole is basically a monster movie. Maybe, I don't know, creature feature. I don't know what these terms are. And again, I'll defer to Kate in like the specifics of that. And I don't know what horror people think about this movie in terms of like monster movie or slasher movies or what they call it. But all I know is that Arnold is a final girl for sure in this first movie.
He is.
He's a final girl and he wins.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when it comes to horror as a piece, it's it's horror in that it takes the slasher subgenre and utilizes it. So when you look at the types of kills, the way he kills, and then of course, actually, yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger as a final girl, it hits all of the notes that it needs to hit to be a slasher. That said, it so when you look at Alien, Alien is also inspired by those same things, but Alien also uses other elements of horror that the Predator doesn't. So whereas Alien uses claustrophobic settings and lighting, music, more horror trappings that makes it a horror movie, a horror sci-fi versus an action sci-fi. Predator goes the other way and uses action beats instead of those horror beats to make it an action sci-fi movie. But its blueprint is a slasher. That's usually
which is kind of. So the reason I always like to not really count this as a horror movie, kind of in the same sense of like, and whether it's fair or not, is while the Predator kills a lot of people in this movie, it unlike Alien where the creature is just trying to kill everything.
Yeah.
Always trying to kill everything. The Predator actually has a set. It's like obviously an intelligent creature. It's set determined like what it is doing. There's plenty of moments you see where it specifically does not kill people, and it depends on who he. The Predator itself is looking for a target, as we said, trophy hunter, in a sense, and obviously defined with action versus, like, this is a creature that just wants to kill, remove, and conquer, per se.
I have slasher examples that go with that, but for the most part, you're not wrong.
Yeah. Again, like, I don't... This is like one of those things where I know when we talked about Blade, people are like, oh, Blade's a horror movie. I was like, nah, Blade's just a kick-ass action movie with vampires in it. But I guess like vampire, I don't know.
No, that's about how I go with it. I think the first one is kind of more horror element.
This is the conversation.
But then we go to the other one.
No. So what Matt said, the first Blade and Blade 2 is mainly because of Guillermo del Toro, and the man can't do anything that isn't horror. But by the time you hit Blade Trinity, it's just a freaking comic book movie. But
like the last one, clearly.
Yeah, but ultimately, Blade as itself, as a property, initially was a horror comic, so... throwing that out there.
Yes, I will agree. The first one definitely has probably more horror in, even in the second one. But yes, by the time we get to the third one, I'm like, there's no more horror in this thing.
But to Matt's,
just vampires with.
Yeah, but to Matt's point, the slasher trope that's being used in Predator uses the action pieces, which are these are two enemies fighting versus this is something that is extremely powerful and overpowering the other person, and they have to overcome it in some way. Versus these are two enemies. Not saying that Arnold is equivalent to the Predator, but they're two people that actually see each other as enemies versus somebody actually just being prey. Even though his name is the Predator, the other person, like the other part of the equation is recognized game a little bit.
I just need you to tell me whether or not Arnold and Danny Glover are final girls. That's all I care about.
Yes.
Okay, great. They're my favorite final girls. So regardless of all that, it all starts kind of like this franchise wouldn't happen if you didn't have like a kick-ass monster for like these people to go against and kind of have that there. And the Predator that we get is much different than what we almost got. In fact, the designs and the shots were so bad that they had to pause production for 8 months and basically redesign what the Predator looked like, because most of the movie was done by that time and all they really needed to do was put in the scenes with the Predator. But it just came across so bad that they like paused production and was like, go back to the drawing board. Actually, Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast as a Predator with all intent that the action star would use his martial arts skills to make the Predator an agile ninja-like hunter. But when the 5'9" Van Damme was compared to Schwarzenegger, who is like 6'2", 6'3", and a massive human being, it became apparent that a more physically imposing man was needed to make the creature appear threatening. Van Damme was removed from the film and replaced by this 7'4" Keith Peter Hall, who would also be in the suit in Predator 2, which weighed over 200 pounds. It just kind of worked a lot better. The film's creature was also designed completely different. Like, it was originally supposed to be a long-necked dog-like head with a single eye, and the design was abandoned when it became apparent that the jungle locations would make it shooting complex and too difficult. like they were like, oh, the thing was designed weird, and like the back leg made it so that you couldn't shoot in the jungle. But really, it was mainly because it was disgusting looking, and I'm glad we never got this. There's also like shots of Van Damme in the red suit for like special effects scenes and like for the regular scenes, and it is terrible. And if you're one of our patrons, you can come look at these pictures where you have what we got for the Predator and Jean-Claude Van Damme in the suit, which looks bad. This looks like a Power Rangers villain.
I hate it so much.
Yes. So one, the funny thing is when you first described that, I was like, so did they just try to make like E.T. but make it bad? And taller. We're gonna make a larger version of E.T. Instead of being a short little chubby thing, we'll elongate the body out and make him a beast. Two, this looks awful, but also I'm so glad because one of the main things that I have liked about the Predator outside of the concept is the actual creature design they do use. I think what they do and everything is actually really cool with the concepts that they eventually chose, obviously.
Yeah, it's
Also
hilarious.
Jean-Claude Van Damme
it's hilarious to watch
5'9".
Jean-Claude Van Damme like jump over stuff in the suit because it looks absolutely ridiculous. And like apparently he hated the suit because it was too hot. He hated it because he thought that he'd be able to like show like his body and stuff, but he's basically just in the suit the entire time. So he hated his time as a Predator.
Because if you know anything about Jean-Claude Van Damme, he loved being shirtless and doing the splits. None of that could be done in the Predator suit.
And he can't really convey that with what you get in this. Movie.
If you had that body, you would all want to walk around shirtless.
I wish more men were doing the splits now. They're not. He took up all the split time for guys. He did it so well, nobody else can do it now.
However, luckily, Stan Winston, who has basically worked on like every major special effects movie in the early 70s all the way up into the 2000s until like basically he died. You know, Friday the 13th 3, The Thing, Terminator, Aliens, Batman Returns, Jurassic Park, Galaxy Quest, Iron Man, Avatar. He would basically come in with just what we get now as a design with a little bit of help from James Cameron. So while on a flight to Japan with Aliens director James Cameron, Winston was doing concept art on the flight since he was also working on Aliens. And Cameron saw what he was drawing and said, I always wanted to see something with mandibles. And Winston basically was like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And then gave the Predator mandibles. So the whole reason we have this mandible looking thing, or I mean, the mandibles specifically, which I think is like some of the coolest part of the design, comes from something James Cameron said on a flight to Japan.
I know we're supposed to hate James Cameron, but like every time we go and do one of these, James Cameron's somewhere. And I know he's supposed to be an arrogant bastard, but I'm also like, if I'd have done all the stuff James Cameron did, I would also be an arrogant bastard.
I mean, if it works, it works. But we had like a really cool design, and he like looking at some of like his Stan Winston's interviews, he's definitely taking it in a much different direction, wanting to make it kind of more human-like, but also like not human-like, to give the audience a kind of a thing that like, oh, this thing could really be out there compared to what we got originally, which looks like a rejected Power Rangers villain that like Rita spawned up, basically. It's bad.
That thing is terrible.
It's bad. Go look it up, guys. It's terrible. It's not good. So we also get some pretty cool effects in this movie. I don't think it gets nearly kind of like the love that it gets, especially when it's coming out, you know, behind things like Jurassic Park and things, but you do have some cool special effects shots in here that are done pretty well. So this was all done by R. Greenberg Associates. They created the film's optical effects, including the creature's ability to go invisible, the thermal vision point of view, the glowing bud, and the electrical spark effects. The invisibility effect was achieved by having someone in a bright red suit because it was the farthest thing from green of the jungle and the blue of the sky, the size of the creature. That's why you have all of these shots of Jean-Claude Van Damme in a red suit. The take was then replaced without the actor using a 30% wider lens on the camera. And then when the two takes were combined optically, a vague outline of the alien could be seen in the background of the scenery, kind of giving that invisibility effect, which is kind of cool. They basically like they reverse green screened it with red, but also it also means you get to see videos of like him. Literally, I can't get this like scene out of my head. He's like jumping over jumping over something. He's doing like a jump kick, like over some crates or something. And this is not what I pictured of the Predator doing. I don't picture him doing like a jump kick. Like it's just ridiculous. For the thermal vision, infrared film could not be used because it did not register in the range of body temperature wavelengths, with the obvious over 100-degree heat of filming in Mexico. So they basically had to blend optical film with thermal film, which meant if they messed up a scene, they had to go back and reshoot it all over again. Because if you messed up even like a little bit, like if something was like even a little bit off, it would come up in when you're trying to merge the films together. So they had plenty of times where they had to go back and reshoot entire scenes because the scenes weren't shot almost identically.
So I will
Which is kind of
say,
interesting because when you think about
so
it, yeah, like that's not how thermal vision works really when you're
right.
like looking at it.
So the funny thing about this is obviously between how bad it is, this movie obviously was made my fascination with thermal vision, and I've always liked just seeing stuff on an infrared spectrum and everything. It's always been fascinating, cool, and I've always loved the way they've done it in this film, even though whether it's right or wrong, obviously you learn a little more, but just seeing how they did it, like just given the ability of like we're gonna give somebody thermal vision. I just don't think they ever thought of that before necessarily.
Yeah, and especially in
it's just always
1987,
cool.
got to be like
Yeah.
super hard to convey because we don't see in that spectrum. So like, how do you get that across as like this is super special fancy effect technology when you don't really have anything like it to kind of really base off of, which I think is really cool. And
I've played
obviously,
entire
like,
video games in spectrum and infrared before.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't bother me like in that seeing that way for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I always go thermal back in the Call of Duty days. It's the way to go.
I played entire Batman in thermal.
Really?
Between Batman, the Call of Duty,
Splinter Cell.
what
I
was it,
played Splinter Cell in
Battlefield.
thermal.
Yeah, and Splinter Cell. I played so many games in infrared. What was it? Not Splinter Cell, but the other Tom Clancy one.
Rainbow Six.
Ghost Recon.
Ghost Recon.
The original
yeah,
Ghost Recon.
Yeah, the original one. Yeah.
But so many of those games just walked around in thermal vision all the time. Didn't bother me.
Yeah,
Does
pretty
that
cool.
look, Kate?
I'm watching
bad.
original
It's bad.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's so
Oh, okay,
bad.
okay.
It's bad, guys.
It's so
It's really not.
Okay.
It's not good, and he's so little. He's so little.
Oh my god, him jumping. Okay, I just saw him jump over the log. Okay, this is. The funny thing is, when he jumps over the log, he does the scanning thing, and you can see the hole where his face is. It's awful.
So the glowing blood, which is obviously like a big thing for the Predators, is actually a very simple effect, but I think the coolest thing about it is that they had to make a bunch of it. So the glowing blood, it was achieved by basically just mixing green liquid from glow sticks and KY jelly. But since obviously glow stick liquid goes out fast because it's just like a basic glow stick, they had to make a bunch. This should say bunch, not punch. They had to make a bunch.
Like a whole punch of it.
Yeah. So all I'm thinking about is like they must on set, like some dude in the back just mixing KY jelly and like breaking up glow sticks is all I'm picturing during that. But the effect comes across very well and definitely a very noticeable thing for the aliens. And even like in the expanded stuff, I think Matt would probably find this interesting that like it's canonized that the Predator or the Yautja are they're carbon based, but they take in 1% more oxygen and I think 4% more nitrogen because their planet is more nitrogen based. So they might not, I forgot like what the thing was, but like biology might make their blood green, even though they're still pretty similar to us, like on a carbon based life form cycle thing.
So they're like plants.
Yeah, they're basically kind of like plants. Yeah. Which is why they're always going into like super humid areas, always coming in the summer because they want to get more that nitrogen.
Oh, interesting.
The electrical sparks were retroscoped animation using the white paper pin registered on portable light tables and on black and white prints of the film frames. The drawings were composed by the optical crew for the finished effect. And this is obviously like the things like inevitably, whenever the Predators get wet and their stuff malfunctions, that those kind of effects, which are, I think, done pretty well, especially in a film in 1987, because even when you're watching the Predators, you're like, oh, like this isn't too far off from what we get in Predators.
Well, also, like, they're, like, just you detailing all of the practical. Like, I'm a sucker for practical. I'm fine with CG, but bad CG can really ruin something. As much as I love The Invisible Man, that was one of those issues for me. Like, there's just something behind practical that you can't get anywhere else. So having you, like, break down all the usage of effects down to, like, using a retroscope or a rotoscope, like, it's amazing, and I wish more films would go back and do that. That's my comment.
Yeah, I mean, and even down to like, I mean, they filmed all of this in Mexico, and even some of like the scenes like where they're kind of trudging through the jungle, they're obviously not shooting a Gatling gun into the jungle because they know that like the kind of dams it'll cross. So
We
they
talking
basically
about
just
Survivor almost did it. Why couldn't they do it?
And even at the very end of the movie, where you have the jungle predator like blowing up the jungle, they didn't actually blow up the jungle, right? Like they went to like an area of the jungle that had just experienced a forest fire, and then kind of like set their scene kind of around that. So even down to making sure that the area was preserved, they took great care in that too when making that first movie. So care more about the environment than Survivor does, apparently. So moving on from that to kind of into what Matt's kind of mentioned here and there is that despite like having just this summer blockbuster movie, there's a whole bunch of lore and things that are surrounded with the Predator and the franchise that is pretty deep. And for me, which is one of the biggest reasons why I like the Predator franchise, because I remember my uncle giving me some comics and we would talk about like the different arcs of like the Predator and like the different kinds of predators and like their civilization, things like that. Because there is a whole lot of that, even if we don't get it explained, I think, enough in the franchise outside of kind of like some exposition. But in at least in like the very least in Alien versus Predator, we kind of get established that again, Alien versus Predator based on the comic first. We have predators make contact with early human civilizations. Upon arriving on Earth, predators are worshipped as gods by humans, and they taught many civilizations how to build pyramid, which is obviously an explanation and a real theory if you watch Ancient Aliens, on why so many different ancient societies have similarly built structures and architecture. But in return, they expected human sacrifices to be hosts of the huntable xenomorphs, which we know as aliens, as the ultimate prey for initiative or like young predators. The predators would return every century to basically do it all over again until one point the xenomorphs spread got out of control, resulting in them detonating a bomb and blowing up an entire civilization, which sets up like our premise for Alien versus Predator, which is an interesting way to do it, to kind of like bring that in. And I'm kind of glad they do it because like I'm a sucker for crossovers, and having like Alien versus Predator crossover is one of the coolest things, even if Ridley Scott doesn't like it, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I think helped the franchise out a whole bunch.
I was gonna say
Yeah, go for it.
Oh no, I was gonna say like I'd always found the history, like you said, with the whole backstory and everything thing. I don't really care for the Alien franchise or stuff, but it is out of all the crossovers we could get, it's one that does seem to fit very well together, and it's just amazing, like just how this all did come together in general. Like I said, the whole premise and everything, and the history and the back part, like it's sad because it is interesting to see, but as you said, we don't get a lot of that in the movies per se. It's kind of mentioned on and whatnot else. I don't really, like I said, I didn't care for Alien vs Predator because I don't really care for aliens and the xenomorphs and everything else. But it is something that has kind of seemed to have been lacking especially for how much they've kind of built it out around the edges, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like Alien vs Predator. I think they would have been better served if they would have like just done the comic, because the comic is like pretty intense, and I think would have done better if you just like would have put it in the future. You didn't have to put it now. It's fine if you don't put it now. It's aliens. You can just put it whenever you want. But I do like Alien vs Predator in terms of like the lore, because they do keep pretty similar, but not like comic accurate, I guess. But I think it's still pretty good. But we do get some more insight into kind of like the way that their society works. So Yautja, or is what they're actually called in like the comics and stuff. Yautja's motivations for hunting are not just for sport, but for rather honor, like Matt mentioned earlier. With the species having developed a whole tribal culture around the status of being top of the food chain as the ultimate predator, their code of honor takes what makes them a worthy adversary, and thus they will make a predator or a clan, like thus making like a predator or a clan more respected. So Yautja society operates on a class or a ranking system, nominally based on individuals' hunting experience and prowess, and their titles include first at the bottom of the totem pole, the unblooded, and these are typically younger Yautja who haven't gone on like the hunt for like xenomorphs or like have really proven themselves in battle. You have the young blood who are a little bit more experienced, but are still waiting for that chance to kind of take on a xenomorph, essentially. So that's kind of what we get in Alien versus Predator, like that trio, because they always go out in those threes. Those are considered like young blood Yautjas. And then once they are able to take out a xenomorph or some other equivalent creature, they'll become blooded Yautjas, and that's when they take out like the thing and they put the T on their heads and stuff like that, and they become blooded. And then it just kind of goes from there. So elites are blooded who have killed a lot of things. And then leaders are elites who have killed a lot of things. And then elders are wise members of the Yautja race who are basically like clan leaders. And we see these in Predator 2, and we see these in Alien vs. Predator, basically like the two people who give the souvenirs at the end of the movies. Those are considered the elders. You have ancient, who are very old Yautja, who are basically responsible for creating the laws. And then you have matriarchs, and the matriarch is a female counterpart to a clan leader. While clan leaders rule in off-world affairs, matriarchs rule and command Yautja Prime, which is their homeworld, and presumably any other world that they inhabit. And despite not being super uniform in culture, Yautja do have that kind of coat of arms. So Yautja who are like cast aside or exiled are typically considered bad bloods, and these can be probably based on kind of like Robert Rodriguez's take of the things are super predators in Predators. Like the trio of like bigger predators are probably bad blood Yautjas.
They really like the word blood, and they put it into every ranking.
Put it into every ranking, even the bad ones.
I like that predators have a concept of blood.
Well, I mean, they have concept of something coming out.
Yeah. So.
Now I got that.
Would you kind of?
I was gonna say I have that Taylor Swift song stuck in my head now. Now I want the Taylor Swift song, but an AMV with
just
Predators,
the movie. Someone, it's probably out there somewhere. I mean, internet exists, so I'm pretty sure that's somewhere. So like this isn't, so when you kind of get into some of the comic book stuff, it's kind of like the old school Wild West days of like the Star Wars canon, like where some stuff isn't completely canonized or we don't know like for sure, but Yautjas are most likely diformics, because most of the females that we do see are much larger than the males that we see, and are typically the ones running things on the planet, and usually aren't hunters. And then while we've never seen any female Yautja in movies, which would, after like, if you know like some of the badass cool hunters they have, is like a total travesty. Like we need some giant ass Yautjas like just tearing shit up. There are some pretty cool hunters in comics, primarily Sister Midnight and Big Mama. Sister Midnight's armor is some of the coolest armor ever, and Big Mama is a huge ass Yautja who's like bigger than like most of the predators that we see in the movies, and she's kind of a gangster.
But why would you? Okay.
What?
She's kind of like a big mama. She's a nice predator, but she'll also rip your arms off.
No.
She's like a big mama, like locally, like.
What?
I do want to know, Kate. I assumed you were going to talk about more than like what you were, considering the way they set up their culture and the way the whole entire ranking system and the class system. I was actually disappointed you actually didn't have more on that, because it's fascinating and something that I know that you've always talked about before.
For me,
in terms of like the classes.
Yes.
My problem, or not my problem, but like I don't have too much lore. Like I think the main real Predator like crossover stuff that I read was Predator and Witchblade. I think when that happened, I think Witchblade happened. I may be making that up. Okay.
No, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Sister Midnight is part of like that whole thing. So like, yeah, you're on it.
She was really cool. So Sister Midnight looks really cool. Her name's really cool, obviously. Big Mama just threw me for a loop, but I do actually really like the lore behind. For me, alien cultures are really cool when, like, that's what I like about science fiction a lot of the time, because you get to see how our personal, like, kinship structures and such get reimagined. But one of the things that I do find actually kind of frustrating is we don't get female predators in the films, even though, like, the lore in the comics has gone to be like, oh yeah, nah, they're badasses. They would also be right there messing shit up.
Yeah. So I think, like, the problem with the lore is that, like, culturally, like Sister Midnight and Big Mama and like a couple of the other ones are complete outliers. Like they're mainly not warriors, mainly because they're at the home planet, like telling everyone what the fuck to do. So they're like the bosses of these stupid ass kids who are running around like trying to kill stuff. But this is again like why like show us their planet more than like a guy just leaving the planet. Like, can we get their planet? Because I'm sure their planet would be super cool to look at, and I would love to see like a matriarch like slap around one of like these giant predators that we see in the Predators, or like controlling the. No, just kidding. I don't want to see anything having to do with the Predator movie actually.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, we should have more of them, and this is like why the human aspect is cool. Like you want to do human aspect stuff because you want to like make viewers feel grounded to the movie, blah 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 blah. But if you just give me a movie just about like predator culture, I'm about it.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'll watch it. You can subtitle the whole thing, and I'll watch it. Just have them clicking. I'm alright with that.
I mean, that doesn't bother me.
No, they're really cool. They're really.
I don't know.
cool.
I'm like subtitles are weird to me. I don't know. Like it doesn't bother me, and I don't really don't mind watching movies in them or dubs or anything. But I just a lot of times don't really like them because I read faster than a lot of times than what's going on.
Yeah,
I love subtitles.
Are you a Yautja? Does your brain just process information so fast that you can just pick up other information and then you're just like saying one-liners from other languages like they do in the movies?
Yes, absolutely. Which is also fascinating because, like, I guess it's also like not saying we don't get this before, but like E.T. was kind of stupid, and then we get Predators that was like an advanced, like they have technology beyond us. They're like smart, they're intelligent.
Well, so that-
you know, we're using.
That's a really good point because, like, a lot of the time, and this is actually one of the big problems in science fiction, is it has to do with humans becoming a colonial force and then meeting some great big bad that will take them out, but doesn't actually have a structure in and of itself. So essentially, like, replicating stuff. So when you actually get science fiction that takes time to build out cultures, places, and motivations, it's one of those where, like, oh yeah, I don't really care about the humans anymore. Again, slasher movie. I don't care about the humans the predator is killing. I care about watching the predator kill them. So give me more of that and or their motivations behind it.
Well,
Yeah, which I
then
mean,
you
I
would
guess
love
it's
Big
really
Mama. Because I mean, that's
I
kind of what
guess-
the comics are. The comics are us being advanced and then still realizing like, oh wait, like these dudes are way better than us in basically everything. And the stories like focus more on specific predators. Like you get to like know different predators by name and not just like, oh, there's the monster there. Like you get to like see them play out their culturally significant things in their life.
Which I guess it's obviously not quite thing, and I'm not gonna say it's the only reason why, but like I've always found Predator more fascinating than Alien. Not saying the Alien xenomorph, I guess technically more intelligent, but like you don't get any of this from the xenomorphs at all. Whether they're intelligent or not, they're still mainly creature, and they still function as creature or animal or whatever you want to say versus this.
Yeah. I mean, and there's like a whole thing. Like we can talk about like their culture all day, like how they, are super honorable, and like when a predator dies, they send all of their information back to like their home planet to like study and like all this like other stuff, and like they're very there's a couple of like the books where one of the predators will be killed and like other predators will come like avenge that guy. So like there's like a very kind of like ritualistic and honor code system. But one thing that I did think that was kind of interesting, that the predators are technically polytheistic, and they have things equivalent to the Grim Reaper called the Black Warrior, who is seen as an eternal adversary who eventually wins all battles. They also have a warrior guard called Paya, who is godlike in their hunting and fighting abilities. They also call him the Conquering Warrior. They also believe in a warrior god who wields bolts of lightning, and those who honor him mark themselves in their helmet. That's why you have like the kind of like T thing on their helmets when they become blooded.
They have Thor.
Well, the god has no name, but is simply referred to as a warrior god, and an extraterrestrial Odin or
Okay,
Thor.
my bad.
Yeah, I guess that
My
works.
bad. They didn't want Thor. He was a kid. They wanted Odin. My bad.
Yeah, they
So,
wanted the big
Adrian,
guy.
How much does this remind you of the Klingons?
A whole lot. I think that's why I like them so much. Yeah, come on, dude. Come on, man. You don't think I got a type in my aliens?
I have an entire. When I did my undergrad thesis, I wrote an entire chapter on Klingons and their religion.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah, I mean they're super
you're
similar.
saying
like, you're not
all
wrong.
of this. I'm like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like I would love, give me that crossover. Give me a Star Trek Predators crossover where the Predators fight the Klingons.
Klingons, that'd be good.
Oh, that'd be so good. Have Worf fighting one of the Yautja, please. Comic people. Are you listening? Do that. And then kind of for our last, and we kind of talked about this, so I don't think we'll spend too much time on this, but one of the biggest things and kind of like why it's still kind of in the public eye, especially in the early 2000s, is the Alien vs. Predator crossovers. And like I mentioned before, the concept of Alien vs. Predator originated from the Aliens vs. Predator comic in 1989. So basically 2 years after the first Predator, we already have these things kind of in the ether of comics from comic book writers Randy Stradley and Chris Warner. And even past that, it's also hinted with an alien skull that appeared in a trophy case aboard the Predator ship in Predator 2. Before 20th Century Fox gave Alien vs. Predator the green light, Aliens writer and director James Cameron had been working on a story for the fifth Alien film. Alien director Ridley Scott had talked with Cameron, stating, "I think it would be a lot of fun, but the most important thing is to get the story right." In a 2002 interview, Scott's concept for a story was to go back to where the aliens creatures were first found and explain how they were created. This project eventually became Scott's film Prometheus in 2012, which is where we start getting like this kind of like continuity gaps and things. And then on learning that Fox intended to pursue an Alien versus Predator, Cameron believed that the film would kill the validity.
Validity?
Oh God, I can't say validity. I can't. Matt, you know how many words you stumble on? Cameron believed that the film would kill the validity of the franchise and cease working on his story. To me, that was Frankenstein meets werewolf. It was Universal just taking their assets and starting to play them off against each other, milking it. After viewing Alien vs. Predator, however, Cameron remarked that it was actually pretty good. I think of the 5 Alien films, I'd rate it third. I actually liked it. I actually liked it a lot. Conversely, Ridley Scott had no interest in the Alien vs. Predator films. When asked in May 2012 if he had watched them, Scott laughed, "No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't quite take that step."
I mean,
so again, Ridley Scott's opinion on Alien vs. Predator is kind of why continuity gets a little bit weird, especially with Alien Covenant. I don't know if you guys have seen Alien Covenant.
I have.
Pass.
But basically, like, it goes like back and blah, 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 blah. Essentially, they have David being the one who created the xenomorphs. But the way that like fans have kind of reconciled that, who want to keep like the continuity, basically saying that David didn't create the xenomorphs. He just basically restarted the genetic line that had almost died out with the black goo that we have in the movie, because it has alien genetics and like human genetics, and he needed human genetics to kind of jumpstart the alien thing again. So that's how they kind of like brand that. But Ridley Scott is like very adamant that like, no, like David created the xenomorphs, but also we have all of this other stuff that says you're wrong, Ridley Scott, shut up.
So
I don't blame
we don't
Ridley
like
Scott because he brought this into existence, and so I can't blame him for being like, "What did you do with my things? Why I let you play with my things, and now they're everywhere." I don't.
I can blame him because this came out. Like, this comic came out in like 1989, and your movie doesn't come out to 2017, and now you want to be like, oh hey, but actually, like, you could have done a cease and desist, you could have done a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, technically, you can't do a cease and a desist because rights are owned by companies, and those companies then retain the rights. And no matter how much you speak out against any of them, the companies will do what they want with it. So it's not far off saying that people are just putting things together to milk their assets.
So
like, hey,
I do want to know.
I don't like that. Don't.
So that's the funny thing.
And then rally all of the Alien fans together.
Well, you know what's funny? No. A reporter probably didn't ask him that question when the comics were coming out. They asked him after the movies did.
They're like, oh, look at all these comics. Like, this is great. Oh, wait, you're making a movie about it? No, boo. I want to make another movie to make my money.
I mean, honestly, I haven't read or even heard of the majority of those freaking comics. I haven't read or heard of the majority of the tie-in comics that we know, that we've talked about on this series. I don't blame the guy. If I make something, but a studio controls it and turns it another way, I'm definitely going to jump on the chance to try to put the shit back where I want it. But
did you see Alien Covenant?
Huh? Oh no, it's bad. I don't like Prometheus. I don't like Prometheus or Covenant.
So I want to know. So I do want to know, since y'all keep talking about thing, is Prometheus good or not? Because I see people who love it and I see people who hate it, and I don't know whether it's actually a good movie or a bad movie.
If you've never seen the original Alien films, you'll like Prometheus.
So I've heard that too.
I'm of the mind that Alien versus Predator explained Prometheus and Alien Covenant much easier than 2 movies did with Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Like, oh, they wanted to like make some super things to kill, and then they lost control of them sometimes. Easy.
In honest, like, I don't like those movies. I don't think he should have retconned it, but I don't blame the guy for trying because it was his property. I don't blame him for it, but at the same time,
he also made it bad, though.
Completely unnecessary. Like, Prometheus, fine. Let Prometheus be Prometheus. Covenant was unnecessary. It's just not good. Prometheus is at least a standalone good movie if you watch it without thinking of anything else.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like an issue or in relation to that, but like the engineers also are a big part of the Alien versus Predator kind of like crossover stuff too, because they're even more than xenomorphs. Like some of the aliens hunt engineers because they are like the ultimate kind of prey thing.
Makes
so,
sense.
And then some people think that the Yautja were created by the xenomorphs, which I guess makes sense because like the Yautja were created by the engineers because the engineers are obviously like super old, like billions of years old.
Yeah.
And you know, creations rising up against their creators would make sense. So I think like that storyline makes more sense than what we got in Alien Covenant, because some just robot like making stuff out of goo is
the whole David thing was frustrating. I did not like it.
It's kind of boring.
I do find it interesting because Kate, you said you wanted to this, you know, his stuff, he wanted to retcon, do all this stuff, but it is funny that he retconned it so badly because he wanted him, but it turned out so poorly that nobody likes it.
Yep, it sucks.
So now we end, because I mean, I guess it's, I mean, I understand what that, I guess is mine, I want it this way, but I'm also kind of like, at what point do you realize, hey, somebody did something better than what I thought, maybe I should just ride this out until that, and now you're making alien movies that people are starting to hate.
It's better, they just did it in a different direction.
Okay, but you didn't like what he did, so it has to be better. All I know is right now, people actually do not care for Alien scenes as much more because of the last 2 movies.
No, so the thing is, I have a problem with the quality of the storytelling in those movies. So even if you remove it from the existing stuff, because I haven't read these comics, so I don't have all this knowledge. All I have is just the basic Alien versus Predator stuff, and I didn't find too much fault with that. It was the actual movie, because like Adrian said, or I think Adrian said it, like, he tries too hard to go over the same thing multiple times in one film. It's the storytelling aspect that makes it bad. Like, I think, but I do agree with you that I feel like he got in his head and was trying so hard to do something different than what existed that he just, at almost every scene is, we're going to re-explain it. We're going to re-explain it. We're going to re-explain it. And it just becomes a slog of a movie that you lose any sort of storytelling that was there. And Prometheus is just really Alien, but Prometheus.
Yes, that I do know. Or, yeah. But it's just been weird seeing, because I obviously, I didn't watch Alien Covenant. I've seen, like, most of Prometheus, but it's still one of those I just haven't sat down and watched it fully. And I'm, like I said, I wasn't big in Alien, and then I got confused because everybody either loved it or people hated it, or then it could tie it back, but then we weren't really sure. And then it was supposed to be like a prequel, but then it wasn't a prequel. And then obviously, like I said, we had the Alien vs. Predator stuff, which obviously, all this comes after Alien vs. Predator, so then obviously threw it all weird from what I knew of those movies. And so that's why when I'm not watching Alien Covenant, didn't care. And so it's just weird that, like, because even, like, we talked about where Ridley Scott basically said, I didn't want to watch these movies. And so now we're just going to remake and retcon the whole entire thing. It just seems like, I don't know. I feel bad for Ridley Scott at some point, but I'm also like, people actually starting, I mean, not that they don't dislike Alien anymore, but they start to not, there's a lot of people that just don't care about Alien anymore because of what's happened in these last, like, 2 movies. Yeah. Especially Covenant.
Essentially, he alienated any existing fans from either franchise to make his story, and then just kept hitting you over the head with it.
Yes.
Yeah, all I'm saying is you could have got Ridley Scott, like James Cameron, like all these people together to make a super like kick-ass crossover franchise. Because like, how many of those do we actually have that are successful and do very well? And could have had an amazing thing based on like existing material and like just tweak it a little bit, instead of giving us 2 movies that are kind of bad at storytelling, like you said. Like, if I have to go to like a YouTube video to like explain the history of your stuff, like that's not good.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I agree there. No, I agree.
Okay, so we'll get into some fun facts because we're over time now. Um, so Peter Cullen, who is credited as the voice of the jungle predator that we have in the first Predator movie, also the voice of Optimus Prime in the all of Optimus Primeness, which is interesting because it's just like an interesting voice that I don't put those two together really at all. If you have watched Predator, you know that there's lots of one-liners. One of my favorite is the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger throws a Bowie knife into someone, sticks them to the wall with a Bowie knife, and then says, "Stick around." That line was improvised. I did not know that, and it makes me very happy to know that he improvised that line because it's so good. So Lex, who is the researcher that we have in Alien versus Predator, isn't the first human to basically be accepted by the Yautja with like the blood mark that we have at the very end of the movie that we see. In the comics, Machiko, or Small Knife as she's given the nickname, was blooded after a similar situation that Lex went through in Alien vs Predator, and actually went on to live with the Yautja. So you had to have those storylines kind of in the comics first of a person being, and specifically, a woman being so badass that she actually went to go live with the Predator people, like full set of armor and everything.
Yeah.
Predator 2 was initially the first movie in the US to receive the NC-17 rating after the rating changed from X, but after several cuts, it went back down to R. Because if you know anything about Predator 2, they just do whatever they want in that movie, and they do it very bloody. There's like way more blood in that one, I think, than any of the other Predator movies. But yeah, initially got an NC-17 rating after the change, which I think is a testament to like how much they were just like, screw it, let's just go full tilt and just kill everybody in this movie. And an interesting fact that I found out while watching the X-Ray on Predators, while I was watching it on Amazon, up until the Predator in 2018, no Predator in any of the movies was ever killed by a firearm. They always did it with like a practical weapon, which I think is super cool and also kind of speaks to like the honor system kind of thing that they follow, which I really kind of enjoyed as kind of like a fun fact. But then Predator messed it up because
that's like Predator, also why we hate this movie.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's another reason why we hate this movie.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
It's real bad, real bad.
Especially just for that one point right there, because come on, man, like how are you gonna mess it up when you go through so many movies of them not killing Predator with actual weapons and then you just blow it?
So the fun thing is I actually knew those last two fun facts. Mainly because Predator 2 comes up in pretty much any movie trivia or any type of rating thing ever.
I just blew Matt's biggest like his one of your pocket questions. I just released it to the community.
Yeah.
Well, if that ever comes up in any of your trivias, you can thank Matt. Matt knew them first, because I didn't know either of those actually. And that's really all I got. I mean, the franchise is fun. I really don't have like a whole lot. Like this isn't like one of those like super deep franchises. I think the coolest thing that I like about it is that it goes from just this summer blockbuster where you're going to have Jean-Claude Van Damme run through the jungle and fight Arnold Schwarzenegger to something with pretty deep lore and cool lore, with some pretty fun movies, some not so good movies. But at the end of the day, like if you like comics and stuff, there's lots of Predator stuff for you to kind of ingest and enjoy, and hopefully somewhere down the line, I'm sure we're going to get it back again at some point. So final thoughts and we'll get out of here. Matt, you want to go first?
Yeah, obviously I haven't really watched Predator's a weird thing, as we talked about some of these other 80s franchises that we've been rolling with for the last few months at this point. I liked Predator. I've never cared for Alien or even that stuff, but it's one of those, I just feel like it was just better and it should just stay kind of in the 80s and stuff. Not that some of the newer stuff with the Alien Predator stuff wasn't like good and decent crossover stuff, but overall, just like between the 2018, I remember seeing that trailer come off and I was like, why? And obviously I haven't read a lot of the extra material, which is like fascinating because like I did kind of know the extra lore to the point, not obviously close to run this episode or anything, but like I knew they had a culture and everything, and that's why I've always found them, like the Predator in general, fascinating, because it's not just your typical creature or monster, but it just, I don't know, some of the stuff they've done in the last like decade or so with this thing, and especially like with the last movie, I'm not excited for because I'm sure we're gonna, like Adrian said, we're gonna get another Predator movie at some point, and I'm honestly not gonna care, sadly, just because like I have fond memories of the other ones, and they've just kind of gone off the rails, and it does to some point, as we mentioned before, like they are just milking this for whatever they got for it.
Yeah.
And until they embrace, obviously, a full line between Alien and Predator and just let them finally just decide this is what we're going with, like, I just don't care, because this back and forth thing has made it really hard to even want to watch Prometheus or The Covenant or just even some of this other stuff, because, like, it's just making it weird, and I don't care about spin-off shit at this point.
Alien, I've always loved Alien more than Predator. I think it's kind of telling, given how we all have broken down on this, because Alien's the more horror one, so it's the one that I like the most, and Predator's still fun, though. My final thoughts are Predators was good, actually. And also, I'm all down for more Predator movies, but I just want them to actually care about the source material, actually care about doing something, and just kind of lean back into what made it great. I'd be totally down for Robert Rodriguez picking up one, not just producing, but actually directing one and making it crazy as hell. That being said, I think with both Predator and Alien, they've both reached a point in their shelf life where what most people would know insofar as visual medium is just kind of everywhere. So it sucks that way. But I mean, I still like it. I do really wish I had the game to play, though.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's all I got. Go watch Predators, not The Predator. Predators, which is also very confusing because I found out that like the original title for the movie was supposed to be like The Hunter, and they changed it to like The Hunter, and then they were going to do The Predator. So they just like repurposed the name of the original movie by doing The Predator, which is annoying and like a terrible way to like title your movies. So go watch Predators and Predator, not The Predator. Drop the article, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
So
Concrete Jungle.
So
Concrete Jungle.
As always, if you'd like to support us a little more, you can head over to patreon.com/butwhythoughpc. And if you want to follow us on all of our social media at butwhythoughpc, and find me at ohmymythrandier on Twitter. Adrian?
Yep, you can find me at SuperReese93, SUPERRUIZ 93 on Twitter.
Matt?
You can find me, I'm going to jump over a trash can because that's what you find in the concrete jungle.
Oh my god.